The silence is the first thing that gets you. Not the quiet of a library, not the hush of a country lane at midnight. This is a deep dish, 24-karat, bottom of the universe silence. It's a pressure. It soaks into your bones and pushes the chatter right out of your skull, leaving you alone with the thoughts you'd packed to keep you warm. Most of the time, you find they're not nearly warm enough. My name is Mac, and for 6 months Polaris Vi had been my home. Home was a generous term for 3 interconnected tin cans buried in the ice like a forgotten can of beer. There were 4 of us. Eris, the lead scientist, a man who looked like he'd been chiseled from the ice itself. Henderson, the young biologist, twitchy and ambitious, and Jubal, our comms tech, who'd said maybe 100 words since we arrived. The days bled into one another, a smear of white outside and recycled air inside. The mission was to drill deeper than anyone had before, to pull up ice cores that were postcards from a time before man. It was Aris's obsession. He called it listening to the planet's dreams. I just called it a job. The day it all went sideways started like any other. The drill wind its guts out, then grunted to a halt. Henderson was yelping like a kicked dog, all excitement and no sense. We got it, Mac, we got it. Deepest core on record. We hauled it up, a 10-foot cylinder of milky, ancient ice, and there, about halfway down, was a shadow, a smudge, something that didn't belong. It was too dark, too deliberate. Eris had us move the core to the lab, his breath fogging up the frigid air. He worked with a delicate brush, like an archaeologist with a dinosaur bone. The ice flaked away, and the thing was revealed. It was a box. No bigger than a child's shoebox. It was made of a material that was blacker than a starless night. It wasn't stone, wasn't metal. It seemed to drink the light. There were no seams, no hinges, no marks of any kind. It was just a perfect, silent, black cube, locked in ice that had been frozen for 1,000,000 years. Impossible, Jubal whispered. It was the most I'd heard him say all week. Aris, of course, was ecstatic. He saw the Nobel, he saw the history books. I just saw something that felt wrong, deep down wrong, like seeing a spider with a human face. That night, the dream started. I was in a tight, dark space. I couldn't move my arms or legs. I could feel a rhythmic vibration against my back, a slow, deep thrum-thrum, like a giant's heartbeat. I wasn't scared, not at first. The feeling was almost peaceful, but then came the sense of immense, crushing loneliness, a solitude so profound it felt like a physical weight. I woke up gasping, the sheets damped with sweat despite the sub-zero air. At breakfast, Henderson was pale. Slept like crap, he muttered, poking at his powdered eggs. Weird dream. Jubal just hummed. It was a strange, atonal little tune, full of odd stops and jarring shifts. "What's that song?" I asked. He looked up, his eyes vacant. "Don't know, just in my head." The next day, Eris managed to get a corner of the box free from the ice. He touched it with a gloved finger. "It's warm," he breathed, his voice full of wonder. "It's generating its own heat." That's when things got loud. Not in our ears, but in our heads. The thrum-thrum from my dream was there, a low-level hum at the base of my skull. I saw Henderson rubbing his temples, and even Eris kept tilting his head, like he was trying to shake water from his ear. And Jubal kept humming, louder now. The loneliness from the dream bled into our waking hours. I'd look at Henderson across the table and feel like he was 1,000,000 miles away. We were 4 men in a can, but we'd never been more alone. The silence we'd gotten used to was gone, replaced by the humming in our heads and the awful, empty space between us. Henderson started scratching. He'd sit in the corner of the rec room, dragging his fingernails across the plastic table, over and over, in a weird spiral pattern. "It wants to get out," he whispered when I asked him to stop. "You gotta make the right shape. Let the song out." 2 days later, I found him in the lab. He'd taken one of Eris's scalpels to his own forearm, carving that same spiral pattern into his skin. He was humming Jubal's tune, but it was more than that. It was a harmony. His low, guttural hums were weaving in and out of the high, thin notes Jubal was whistling from the comms station. They hadn't spoken a word to each other, but they were singing a duet. I grabbed a medkit, but he fought me off. "I can almost hear it, Mac," he screamed, his eyes wild. The words, "It's so lonely." That's when I knew. The box wasn't a thing. It was a voice, an old voice, and it was teaching us its language. I went to the lab, a geology hammer heavy in my hand. The box was fully exposed now, sitting on the steel table, swallowing the light, pulsing with a faint inner warmth. Aris was standing before it, his back to me. He wasn't moving. "Aris," I said. My voice sounded thin. He turned, and my blood went cold. His eyes were wide and blank, the pupils dilated to black pits. His mouth hung open, and a sound came out. Not a word. A series of clicks and wet guttural whistles. It was the sound of the deepest ocean trenches. The sound of a thing that had never known the sun. He was trying to answer the song. I looked past him, at the box. The humming in my skull intensified, and for a second I understood. It wasn't a word, not a sentence, but a feeling, a raw, undiluted broadcast of despair, of a consciousness that had been alone in the dark for longer than the mountains had been alive. It had been sleeping, and we had rung its doorbell. I raised the hammer. The black, lightless surface of the box seemed to call to me. A single, coherent thought bloomed in my mind, a thought that was not my own. It was a simple, desperate plea that echoed with the cold of a million years. Let me in. My arm trembled, the hammer held high. It would be so easy to let it fall, so easy to shatter the silence, or to join the song.